Hey there, and welcome to Season 4 of Stories Unveiled, the podcast where we believe every story has the power to inspire, connect, and transform. Whether it's through the mundane moments or the life-altering tragedies, we highlight God's story on display in our lives. Each episode, our guests get real, and they dive into their own personal journey, where we hold hardship in one hand and hope in the other, while we seek Jesus in the messy middle. I'm Ashley Sears, and I am so glad you're here. Hey, it's Ashley here at Stories Unveiled. Before we dive into this episode, I want to personally invite you to our upcoming annual Fall Women's Conference. This is your chance to experience the power of real, life-changing stories, just like the ones here on every episode, brought to life in person. Join us for a full day of hope, inspiration, and connection, featuring incredible regional and local speakers and a moving keynote session, plus amazing uplifting worship. Connect with amazing community partners and browse our curated vendor booths. Don't miss this opportunity to gather, grow, and be encouraged by stories of hope at this fall's Stories Unveiled conference. Register now at storiesunveiledconference.com. We can't wait to see you there. This episode was a live recording of a streamed video chat. Due to streaming variables, please excuse any inconsistencies in this recording. Rob Roozeboom is the founder of RISE Ministries, host of the podcast Enjoying the Journey, and author of the brand new book, Broken Still Chosen, Finding Hope in Jesus When You Feel Unloved, Unseen, or Forgotten. Rob is an incredible storyteller and has a passion for helping people see who they are in Christ. Rob, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I do just like to dive right in, and I want to just kind of set the stage and give some context. You have muscular dystrophy, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So you were diagnosed as a child. Talk to me a little bit about what that was like, kind of things leading up to that, and what that looked like for you and like your future. Talk to me about that.
So I'm a kid. I'm growing up in central Iowa. My mom and dad are farmers, or I should say my dad is a farmer. And I don't know anything except that I love being on the farm. I love being with my dad. I love tractors. I love animals. I love climbing fences. I have an older sister and a younger brother. And so while we're on the farm, I was like any other kid. I could ride a bike. I could climb. I could jump, run, everything. But there was something in my sister that my parents started to notice. Her being 2.5 years older, she walked on her toes. And they thought, well, that's different. What does that mean? The next thing I know, I'm at the University of Iowa being tested for, muscular dystrophy. They were looking at what's called CPK levels. If they're really high, it is an indicator that there can be muscular dystrophy. So at age 5, I am in a hospital. I can still smell the smell of the hospital. I don't like it. I mean, I still to this day don't like it. I actually talk about it a little bit in the book. And I remember the doctor saying to me, sit on the floor, stand up, sit on the floor, stand up. And I'm thinking, you sit on the floor and stand up. I'm fine. I mean, I don't think anything's different. Yeah. But what we found out is we all got tested that day. Mom and dad, my sister, myself, and my brother. At the end of it, it was my sister and I are diagnosed with which called limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. Have found out all these years later, it's actually type 2A. That particular time, they had diagnosed us with what was called Becker muscular dystrophy. So 2 out of the 3 have it. Wow. One doesn't, being my younger brother. And I'm 5 years old, but it really doesn't mean anything to me because I haven't begun to see any of the symptoms. I'm just a kid loving life, living on the farm.
So you were diagnosed without any symptoms because your sister had symptoms. Is that correct? Like your parents had noticed something about your sister, so they decided we're getting all our kids tested for this.
Yes.
And so you had no symptoms, but at 5 years old were diagnosed with it. That in and of itself is a little bit of a kind of crazy, wild thing, because it's got to mess with your head a little. Like, I know this is going to happen, because isn't it a degenerative disease?
Oh, is it ever? Yes, it is.
Man.
Yes, it is. But again, at 5 years old, I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
I have
that's
no
true.
idea.
Nor do you care, really.
I didn't, because I could run, jump, sit in a chair and stand up, sit on the floor. The only thing, I guess, that I could not do, now that I think about it, is I was never a great kindergarten kid, because they made you take naps. A, I did not like that, because I did not like taking naps. And B, they always made you sit crisscross applesauce. Yeah. And I couldn't do it. I just thought my hips were really tight or something.
Really?
And I had no idea. I was like, why do we have, this is stupid. Why do we have to sit crisscross applesauce? I
this
mean,
is dumb.
What's the point? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that, sitting physically that way. So I don't know if that had something to do with the way my muscles were. That's the only thing that I could, at 5 years, 6, 7 years old, look at and be, that was different compared to other kids. Otherwise, I was pretty normal.
Wow. So at what age then did your symptoms start? Like, when did you really realize, like, oh gosh.
6th grade. Yep. Okay. It was 6th grade. And so again, I tell people all the time, I love farming. I don't make that up. I love farming. I love combines, tractors, trucks. There's just something about the farm, the way the family is together, the way you can work the land, smell the dirt, smell the hay. There's just nothing quite like it. And so when I was 9 years old, my dad sits us down and goes, "Hey, I think God's calling me to ministry." What are you talking? You're a farmer. No, he's not calling you to ministry. I said, "Dad, I was in the hog lot with you earlier. You used some words I don't think God lets pastors use. I don't think you're supposed to be a pastor." Well, I ended up losing that argument at 9th grade, or not 9th grade, 9 years old.
Okay.
And so my dad moves us to become a pastor. So he goes to seminary, and my greatest love of farming is now gone. I mean, I could tell you today, I can still picture the moving trucks at that house and leaving that. So now I become a town kid. So by 6th grade, I'm now a town kid, and my next greatest love is sports. I mean, I love sports. So I'm going to be the greatest. I'm going to be a baseball player, basketball player, football player. And I grew up in the Michael Jordan era. The harder you try, the better you become. You can be cut and become the greatest, or arguably one of the greatest for sure. So 6th grade, I remember PE class. Again, don't totally understand what PE class is all about, except somebody getting a job and telling kids to run and jump and pick up blocks. And then if you do it really fast, you'll get the presidential award, which I still have zero idea what that even means. Right. But I remember if you did it really fast, the president would send you this nice little award. Well, they also made you run the mile in PE class when I was growing up. Why, I still don't understand.
They still do it.
I had to run the mile. I know. It's like, I mean, you want to kill a kid's social life, just make them run the mile. I mean, I was that kid. So we run the mile in 6th grade, and I ended up getting dead last. And that's when it started. I tried. I mean, I tried with everything I had inside of me, and my legs would get tired, and they wouldn't pick up, and they wouldn't go as fast as I wanted them to. And again, I really didn't know what I was fighting. I thought I could beat it 100%. No joke, thought I could beat this. I'll work a little harder. I'll lift weights. I'll try a little harder. In 6th grade, getting dead last in PE kind of set it up for me that you're up against something that's going to be pretty difficult.
Well, yeah.
I just had no idea.
Learning so early almost gives you a sense of, okay, great, we can get in front of this. We can figure it out. Yeah, we can try and curb it somehow, or yes, beat it. but that's just not possible, is it?
That's not what happened. Not even remotely close. We just got off the road literally yesterday, sharing some of these stories. And I grew up in an era in a home where you don't talk about what doesn't measure up.
Yeah.
And I was just having this conversation with somebody. So it was told to me if we didn't talk about it, it didn't exist. So you sweep it under the rug mentality. The problem is we cannot talk about that. I just got dead last in PE and I'm not 100% sure why, or why my body's not working like everybody else's. And we can say it doesn't exist, but it does. And I get to live it every day.
Yeah, man. So how did that affect, well, obviously, I mean, you wanted to be an athlete, what else did you want to do? Like what was not going to work out with this diagnosis as you got older? Like what dreams did you have that were dashed, really?
What I had learned at this time was God takes everything I love.
Yeah.
He took the farm and now he took sports.
Ugh.
So I am being punished is where I'm at. So I'm in 6th grade going, okay, I want to be an athlete. Okay, Rob, try harder. Just try harder, put in the work. You'll become better. 7th grade, go out for sports, not a starter. Oh, okay, 8th grade, go out for sports, still not a starter. I mean, I can pick up basketball in the summer. I can do workouts, etc. And it's just not going to work out the way I thought it would. I got so dark when I was an 8th grader. I didn't want to live anymore. I literally believed God wanted nothing to do with me. And that's the first time I ever attempted suicide. That's the first time I didn't want to be here anymore. I was so wrestling with, why would you put me on this earth just to take what I love? That just doesn't make sense to me. And my heart was broken. My heart was hurt. It's not that I didn't have good days. It's just really what I wanted and what I loved seemed so far-fetched that it seemed as though I was being toyed with. Like, ha, 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 ha. Oh, you want that? No. And a barrier between God and I started to get built, a pretty big one. Now, remember, my dad's a pastor.
Totally.
And I remember him giving sermons. Oh, I remember when I learned about Psalm 139:13. I thought I was going to come unglued. You're telling me God knit me together in my mother's womb? That he ordained all the days for my life? Oh, it's time to go, big guy. And so it began a battle. It began a battle for the next few years. And by the time I was a freshman in high school, I went out for all the sports I love. Well, it started in football in the fall. I collapsed in football. My body just gave out on me. And I thought, well, that's weird. Went out for basketball, collapsed in basketball. My body gave out, ran into the drinking pot. My legs just quit. Baseball, I was up the bat, got hit in the leg. Got hit so hard, I got the seams in my leg. Well, after that, I was like, no, I'm done. I'm done with that one.
Oh, my goodness.
And I have never played organized sports again in my life. That was it. I walked away from organized sports going, God, I don't get you. I'm not sure I want anything to do with you. And so I would shake my fist at him. I'd yell at him. I would be so angry, just so hurt, just really, really hurt, and thought, what do you want from me? I don't understand. Okay, farm's gone, sports are gone. What am I going to do with my life? Am I just here for your amusement to see me suffer? I don't get it. And wrestled through a lot of things. I did get to go, well, forced to go to a religious weekend, Christian weekend, that did help me realize, okay, maybe Jesus does love me. I'm still wrestling with his dad, but maybe Jesus loves me a little bit. I do need it. I do need a savior because I'm pretty broken and pretty hurt. But this father of his, we're having a hard time getting on this understanding what he's about. So I end up going through high school, wanting to play sports, don't get to play sports. My brother comes up behind me. He's 6'1", 100 pounds with a washboard stomach and smart. And I'm like, God, seriously? I couldn't get anything out of this equation. He gets all of it. So I remember watching him. I'd get asked in the hallways at school, why do you walk that way? And why is your brother setting assist records? And why? I just got so tired of the why question that you asked me, what did my dream become? Just to fit in.
Yeah.
Just to be normal.
Yeah.
Just to not have to answer questions every day. That's really what my dream in high school became, was, can I just be like everybody else?
Wow. Well, obviously that was probably a really dark and long season. But at some point, something had to have shifted. At some point, it probably didn't happen overnight. I don't know, maybe it did. But you have gone on to be an author. You founded RISE Ministries, is that correct? And you also have a podcast, is that right?
It's called Enjoying the Journey.
Yeah, Enjoying the Journey. So you have done so many amazing things. And God is using this, right, wrong, or indifferent. You know, he's using this for his glory, as he often does. At least I have found that. That nothing is wasted, no pain is wasted. And while he, I don't believe, causes these things, and is for sure never was punishing you, he allows things, but then, gosh, he uses them for his glory, for amazing things, especially if we just step aside and let him. So talk to me about RISE Ministries and your book, and just some of those things that you've gone on to do, and what the shift was.
The shift comes in a beautiful 100 and nothing, blonde hair, blue-eyed girl that became my wife. Honestly, it was,
I love that.
It's in the book. You can read the story. But what it came down to, my other dream, I think eventually was to be married. It was. But I thought to myself, there is no woman in their right mind that wants to jump into this story. Because you mentioned it earlier. It's progressive.
Yeah.
There is currently not a pill, not a workout, not a regimen, nothing that I can do to stop it or cure it currently as we talk today.
Yeah.
And so when I looked at my life, yes, I was ambulatory. Yes, I could walk. But what person wants to jump into this story?
Yeah, knowing where it's going to progress and knowing where it's going to go.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure I could jump into that story, and I'm the one living it.
Yeah.
And I meet this wonderful gal in high school. We did not date in high school, but God brought our paths back together about a year and a half after high school. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. She was living back in Iowa. We were able to talk, rebuild a friendship, which then turned into dating, which then turned into engagement, marriage. And it came down to, she will still say to me, Rob, it doesn't matter what you do. It matters who you are. Honestly, I started to see the love of Christ in a way I had never experienced in my life.
Yeah.
And I will say, when you experience the love of Christ, even the hardest of hearts will break. And mine started to break. All the calloused, all the hardness of it started to break. And this woman started to love me, no strings attached. What is wrong with you? I mean, what? What? So she started to show me the love of Christ. And remember, I did say in high school, I went to a Christian weekend and I started to experience this love of Jesus.
Right.
Now I'm seeing this love of Jesus being lived out in front of me, literally in front of me. And so I'm in college and I'm thinking, all right, I can't be a farmer because my father-in-law told me I can't work with my hands long term because of the diagnosis.
Yeah.
You better go to school and study. Great. Just what I want to do. So that's what I did. And I thought, well, I'll become a banker. I'll loan money to farmers, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I go to my advisor and I said, hey, I'd like to get an internship in the banking world. Sorry, Rob, the last one just filled up. What? Every time I tried to get into banking, it closed the door. Every time. Even when I was going to community college in Arizona to when I came back to go to full-time college. And so then I'm thinking to myself, and I knew God was working. I was taking Bible classes. And I felt it, but I was like, nope, Shh, quiet, guy. Nope, I don't want to tell people my story. I don't want to tell them how I've screwed up. But we are taking the Old Testament and wow, the stuff going on in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And God could still use them.
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me. There might be hope for me.
Some of the most amazing people,
Yes.
David, really,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Not a great guy sometimes.
No.
Not a great guy.
No.
Moses.
Yeah.
Well, he liked to tell God no.
Yeah.
Moses, go and speak. Yeah, no, I don't think I'll do that.
I'm good.
Yeah. And even if we go back to Abraham, we always talk about Abraham's faith, right?
Yeah.
There's one moment in his story where he didn't have great faith because he did not wait for God's promise for a son.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah. There's the other woman.
Yeah. It's
And
crazy.
it's like, wow, God. I wonder how many other people don't know about all this craziness in the Old Testament.
Right.
And I felt God start saying to me, go tell your story. Nope. So I told him no for 2 years, and then he won. And I remember going, well, I probably won't make it just as a speaker, so I better build a ministry around it, or try to build a ministry around it. And I remember going home to this beautiful Jesus-loving woman who's softening my heart. And I said, hey, I think God's calling me to ministry. No, you don't ask people for money and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, hon.
Your wife said no?
Oh, yeah. First 2 years, she was totally against it. Totally against it. And so we get going, and I just feel God saying, Rob, just go share your story. And so that's how it started. And then when we named the ministry, I remember going to my brother and I said, hey, I don't know what to call this. Could you help me? And he goes, what about RISE? He goes, you have a hard time rising. What if you call it RISE? And it stuck.
That's awesome.
We used to have an acronym that went with it, but that's how it started. So I started traveling and speaking to youth groups and churches and businesses. And then the Muscular Dystrophy Association came calling. And in 2001, they flew us out to LA. And so Charlotte and I did the National Jerry Lewis Telethon. 2001, 2002, met Jerry Lewis, Ed McMahon, Tony Danza, Reba McEntire. I mean, it was just rode the elevator with Kermit the Frog, or the guy that does the voice of Kermit the Frog.
It's not real Kermit.
It's not real Kermit. Not real Kermit.
That's crazy.
But it was, and so then we started traveling and speaking for them. And then I thought, well, what about a radio program? So we started a radio program. It was like a 30-second minute food for thought. Then we did a magazine for teenagers. And then we realized teenagers don't really read magazines or read anything. So we stopped doing the magazine. Then we started mission trips, and we took teenagers both domestically and internationally for the next 10 years. And then this thing started called a festival. In 2005, we started a Christian music festival. And again, I was against it. I was like, no, that's a terrible idea. Why would we start a Christian music festival? There's one 60 miles down the road.
Right.
And God got a hold of my heart again. And it all started by Charlotte, my wife, showing me the love of Jesus. And it started to melt me, and then studying the Old Testament and seeing all the craziness in it. I thought, and then it became so real. Like that hope that we were talking about before we started. I was living without hope. I was living so dark, so broken. And all of a sudden, I really got to meet this Jesus. And it just started changing me. And then I started thinking, if this Jesus is real, and there is a heaven, and there is a hell, I've already lived in the hell. Because when I wake up every day, look in the mirror and hate everything I see, it feels like hell to me.
Yeah.
Well, there is no way I want to spend eternity feeling that way. And all of a sudden, it just became real. And the hunger and the desire for others to not go down the same path, to not listen to the enemy's lies, to not believe that they're worthless, that they're nothing, that no one could ever love them, they'll never amount to anything. It's like, no, I just want to point people to Jesus.
Yeah.
That's what it became or has become. And it all became, or it all started happening because of somebody showing me that genuine, unconditional love that is offered through the cross.
I love that. You've said it now a few different times about how all of this became really because one person, your wife, showed you the love of Christ, that her actions and her example are really what led you to him, not because she forced you, but because she was just an example. She was Jesus to you. She embodied it. And it really is a testament to how our behavior and our actions matter, and the example that we set and how we are called to be like Jesus to other people too, because you never know the seeds that are planted. You never know the example that you're setting for somebody else who is watching us to go and seek Jesus too, based on who we are. If they know we are a Christian, we are called to live like Christ. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, really quick, tell me what your book is about and where people can find it, because I do want to be able to put that in the show notes before we move on.
Yeah, so it's called Broken, Still Chosen, Finding Hope in Jesus When You Feel Unloved, Unseen, and Forgotten. Best way to probably get it is to go to Amazon or Books and Nobles, Barnes and Nobles.
Okay.
Or
we'll put links in the show notes too. So
awesome.
That's awesome. And is it your story? Is it just like, is it a memoir? What is it?
No, it's not just a memoir. When we put the book together, it was, okay, yes, there will be stories, some of which I have shared, but then it's at the end of every chapter, it's what's true for you. So when I tell people the tagline, finding hope in Jesus when you feel unloved, unseen, and forgotten, I tell them that's not just a flashy tagline. Those are the 3 words I've wrestled with most of my life. And so not just by society, but by Almighty God. Has he forgotten me? Has he stopped loving me? And does he even see me anymore? And so we look at that, and, one chapter is called Battles with the Father. When I tell you it got real, I'm not making that up. We had to battle. We had to wrestle. Yeah. I still wrestle. I mean, literally, I'm living with a progressive disease that doesn't go away. The number one thing that I have learned from this book, writing this book with my friend Kathy, is that joy and grief coexist.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I thought if I had grief, I could never have joy. And if I had joy, it would erase all my grief. And when I say joy, I don't mean happiness.
Right.
Happiness is fleeting, circumstantial, here today, gone tomorrow. Yes, I still have it. Of course I do. But I'm talking about joy. And when I describe it, I mean that you can have a tear rolling down your cheek, but you have a smirk in your heart because you know who wins.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I learned the most. I remember when we were writing the book, I had to go back to some stories that I didn't want to relive. I really didn't. And Kathy called me that day. I think we were working on, I don't remember what chapter. She goes, how's it going? I said, Kathy, I don't know if I can write today, to be honest. I'm hurting. I'm just hurting. And she was walking through her own story at the time as well, which was painful. And she goes, well, you need to go back to the chapter before to do the principles you wrote about. I'm like, what? I don't even remember what you're talking about. You remember those 4 principles you gave everybody? Nope, don't have a clue. What are you talking? She goes, I think you need to go look at them so you can write today. I was like, oh, yeah. So I went back to look at them. And yeah, it's in those moments of hard where you praise, you still have prayer, you have community, because we are not meant to walk this road alone. And then, of course, we read God's word. So each chapter ends with what is true for you. So if the enemy tells you a lie, what's the truth?
Yeah.
And yeah, a Bible verse goes along with each of them. And we talk about some of the individuals that you and I talked about in the Old Testament. There's quite a few of them throughout the chapters and what they walk through.
That's awesome. Now, I want to zoom out just a bit because not everybody can necessarily relate to having a degenerative disease or some sort of, whether it's terminal or seasonal or whatever. However, I do believe that every single person can relate to feeling hopeless at times, can relate to feeling like life isn't fair. And I'm just curious, like, I'd love to know how you get through the hard and you find the hope. Like, life isn't fair. Your situation isn't fair. I also know life isn't fair, but right. What do you do with that when you're like, God is good, even still, despite my situation, and there is hope in that? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And part of it is that prayer, praise, community is huge. So I would say that to somebody, I'd probably re-ask the question. So if you're hurting and it looks hopeless or you're in a hard season, number one question I would ask you is, who's speaking into your life? Who are you allowing to speak into your life? Because that community is so detrimental. If I have people that are pessimistic, the sky is falling, nope, go away. I don't want you around me. I mean, like you said, life is not fair.
Yeah.
We can point that out all day long. I don't need to be reminded of it by Debbie Downer next to me all the time. And so who's speaking into your life? Community is so very important. I literally just got off the road yesterday. My wife is not only my wife, but my number one caretaker. Such an odd role. Yeah. It's hard to explain. But being on the road, I get to take other individuals. And so I have guys. I have a slew of guys that we change in and out and move around, and who's available and who's not available to go along. Well, those individuals become so close to you that you do life in a way that I can't even explain sometimes. And that really does help me in the heart. I'll explain it this way. One of the young men that has worked for us for 4 years just graduated and went to college. He was wrestling this year at the state tournament. And my wife, my daughter, and I were there. And I was at this tournament, and I was sitting up in the accessible seats while everybody else cheering for him was maybe 13 rows down. And I'm getting a little upset that I'm sitting where I'm at because everybody else is further down. And I'm having this conversation with God in my head going, God, why can't I just be down there? Why do I have to always sit somewhere else? And then I also had another setback with my body. Had broken my femur, so I no longer stand on my own. And I was just, God, last time I was in this building, I could stand up and I could be a normal guy. And I was just going down this road. And I watched this young man who's working for us in the quarterfinal, the match before you go to state, and he wins. And he sees everybody cheering him on, and they're all the ones sitting down there. And for a moment, I was really sad. And then I heard God say to me, but Rob, if you weren't broken, you wouldn't know this young man the way you do. You wouldn't even be here. This young man shows up at my house every morning at 7:45 to make sure I get out the door to go to work, would check on me after school, would travel with me part-time, carried me off airplanes this summer as we went around the country speaking. that's sometimes how I get through the hard, is allowing a community in to walk it with me, because otherwise it gets really lonely and really dark quickly. Yeah. And when I get to see God use other people, it does touch my heart deeply. It really does.
That's beautiful. I just loved listening to that story, because I can just picture it, and I can relate in such a way that is like, man, this sucks, for really lack of a better term. This sucks. Yep. And if it weren't for, X, Y, and Z, these people wouldn't be in my life. I wouldn't be here in this moment right now. And what a gift I'm assuming this kid has been. And what a gift, just knowing him and being able to be there and be present. Sometimes it just takes a perspective shift, right?
Well, and it goes even deeper. Now he's wrestling at college. His dad now is one of the guys that travels for me. And his younger brother just stepped into his role. He was the one with me this last run on the road. That's
cool. That's really cool. Yeah. I love that. We talk about here at Stories Unveiled, actually it's the very, very intro of the podcast, and you even touched on it, which is funny, but we talk about how you can hold hard, like the hardships and all the terrible things in one hand, and you can hold hope in the other. Mm-hmm. And it's actually in the middle where we seek Jesus and where we find him, right? It's in all of the moments in between, and you can hold two very opposing things, two very opposing feelings at the exact same time. And I just love how you said that you can hold grief and joy, and, you can hold hope and hardship and all of these things. And so I just want to ask, I kind of already asked it, but if you could just tell a listener one thing, maybe different than you've already said, like community and whatnot, one piece of encouragement, if they find themselves in a really dark, hopeless situation right now.
I know it sounds very simple, but if there is breath in your lungs, there is purpose in your life.
Yeah.
Period. No matter how bad that breath seems to be taken from you, there is purpose. And I have learned that when we can find one little God whisper, that he has not forgotten us, that he still loves us, sees us, and has not forgotten us. And we can take that little God whisper and believe that he is for us. So one of the hardest verses I've ever wrestled with is working all things for my good and his glory. They don't say all the positive things. They say all things, which
every
I do
last
not always appreciate. Yes. And if you're in that moment, there is a God that loves you. There is a God that wants you, wants a relationship with you, and has purpose for you. And maybe the best way to start to find that little flicker of hope is find a place where you can help one other person in a small way. It doesn't have to be big, just a small way where it allows you to see how being a blessing can be so awesome in the hardships.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob. Your story is truly incredible. I just love what you're doing, and I just so appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story with us. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's conversation on the Stories Unveiled podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a rating or review. If you would like to learn more about Stories Unveiled and our events, go to storiesunveiledconference.com or follow us on Facebook or Instagram at storiesunveiled_. The Stories Unveiled podcast is created in partnership with KTSY and Barefoot Media Ministries. For more encouragement and other podcasts, visit ktsy.org. Have an incredible day and go live unveiled.